Please, Minik.
Well, thank you. Well, I think I would just like to give you a brief run through the past 4 billion years of Earth's history, because I think by looking back in time and by understanding our past, that helps us, of course, understand our present and understand our role in nature. And I think particularly in a congregation like this, many people probably think that, as we also heard before, that arts and culture and these things are kind of soft value kind of things that have little impact on the planet, whereas we have the very brutal and very strong forces of nature that are much stronger than anything we can fathom here. But I think that I will try to prove you wrong in that anticipation. But first of all, I'd like to, of course, being a geologist, introduce you to a rock, because the rock is the most beautiful thing you can have. And this particular rock is a very special rock. Every rock is a document. It's a record of something that happened in the past. And with the right skills, of course, you can read what it is telling us. And this particular one happens to be the birth certificate of life on Earth. This is the evidence, this rock holds the evidence of the first life we know on the planet. And it's 3,800 million years old, which is an awful long time. This rock has a memory that goes back through 1/3 of all time that existed in the universe. So it's a very clever rock. And you will see that it's black. And the reason why it's black is that it's full of carbon. And what it tells us is that the carbon cycle, which the main issue of climate discussion today, that this rock, when it formed, bacteria were already living in the ocean and taking energy from the sun and putting it as carbon into the Earth's crust. And this has been going on for almost 4 billion years, that irreversibly organisms have taken carbon out of the system and put it down in Earth as an energy resource. And only through the past 150 years, we have learned how to take it out again and spend it. And we almost spent all of what has been saved up to 3.8 billion years during the past 150 years. So maybe I disagree with you that we have lost our sense of spending. We have been doing it pretty well, I would argue. But anyway, I'd like you all to meet this rock because it's a very special rock. It's actually unique in the planet. And I would like to have it back at some point when we are done with this. But I think what we learn again from studying the way the planet functions is that the planet Earth is actually an extremely boring place. Very little takes place. Olafur comes from Iceland. You have volcanoes going off in and now and again. But if you look on Earth, on average, very little happens. This rock is a testament to that. You can still see the sedimentary structures that formed when clay settled on the ocean floor 3.8 billion years ago. That's a very long time. And this rock has hardly experienced anything through the past 4 billion years. So Earth is extremely boring. But one thing happened about maybe 3.5 billion years ago, and that is that life learned how to take solar energy and convert it into what we know as chemical energy, turn it into like the coal here, take it into action. And that basically speeded up the activities on the planet by a factor of 3 or something like that. And since that, the power of life has vastly overwhelmed the power of nature, if you wish, if you consider life something slightly different from just basic nature. So Earth today has a very, very small energy conversion inside of it. And the photosynthetic apparatus of plants process 3 to 4 times more energy than all the earthquakes, all the drifting continents, all the mountains building, all the volcanoes, all these things together are completely irrelevant relative to what life does. And that's, of course, important for us to realize because we are part of life on this planet. And since maybe a couple of million years ago, humans found out that they could put a match to a stick and make a fire. And that made very little impact on the planet. It was a new invention, but it basically did just burn things that would rot anyway. But about 150, 200 years ago, an idea formed in the brain somewhere in France or England or wherever it was, and that was the idea that you can turn heat into work. It was the concept of thermodynamics, that all energy is equal, and you can change energy from one form to another. And you can just say, okay, I don't like this kind of energy, I like this kind of energy. So what you can do is that you can take heat and you can turn it into work, and you can lie on the sofa while the heat does the work for you. This is the steam engine. What that meant basically was that, again, this idea of spending is extremely important because that allowed humanity to basically follow all their aspirations. It was the time we know as Enlightenment, and this was the time where we freed the slaves, we had democracy, all these things. The reason why we can do that is because we can afford it, because we can tell a machine to go do the work rather than tell somebody else to go do the work. One thing we don't want to happen is us to do the work. But as long as somebody does the work, we're happy, and we can all live in peace and harmony. So the spending of fossil energy, I think, today is mistakenly seen as a stupid idea that is basically technocratic and unhealthy for society. I think the spending of fossil energy is probably the best thing ever happened to humanity, because again, it gave us all the rights of freedom, and all these things that we enjoy today, they are paid for by fossil fuel. And of course, it's only in the past maybe 30, 40 years that we realized that there's a side effect from that, and that is the climate change that is coming out of it. But during that time, we also learned that the energy we get from the sun is so vastly outpowering every other energy sources that if we just tap into that rather than into fossil fuel, we can keep up our energy spending and all the benefits we get from it without causing the damage to the atmosphere and to the system of Earth. So I think it's I think there's one thing that is really important if we want to act on climate issues is not to make it a matter, the spending of energy, a matter of stupidity and something we should point fingers at, and we should find who is responsible and who to blame for it. We should all embrace this. This is the best thing ever that we spend all this energy. And when we look at ourselves, when we drive a car, we don't drive a car because we are fascinated by technology. We drive a car because we don't want to go home and have dinner with our kids tonight, or we want to go meet our friends. We want to be at this meeting today. We come from all corners of the world and spend energy to get here, but we do it for the sake of social interaction. So again, if you try to look at the way the planet works, and we just talked about life in general, how life is processing most of the energy on the planet today, but if you look at the human race, now we have actually got the power that when we use fossil energy, we release as much power as 1/3 of all the powers that are working inside the Earth. So all the plate motions, everything else, we can do almost the same with the energy we are harnessing. So again, humans are becoming the major power on the planet. We are outpowering basically everything else. And that is something we should accept. We should understand that we are a major power on the planet, and we have to be the adults. We have to be the grown-ups who make the right decisions, because the way the planet is going to develop in the coming future is not a matter of destiny. It's not something that we just, on a ride to an unknown destiny. It's something that we have to decide conscientiously where we want to go, because it's under our mercy which way the planet is going to go. So I think that's a very important issue to that, is that what we do is a matter of our aspirations, our hopes, our wishes, and everything else. And about 99% of the energy we spend is for purposes that we choose that we don't need. So therefore, the soft issues like culture and arts and everything else are actually determining 99% of our energy spending, or at least influencing it. So my argument would be that the answers to how we should basically get the planet to continue is by using the arts and sciences and culture and everything else, understand that those are the major powers, and the power of imagination is the strongest power on the planet today. So, thank you.
Wow.